Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. It's time now for the week that was. Let's take a look at the top stories that made headlines around the globe this week. And we're starting at home with a very sad one. Elder statesman and prominent chieftain of Afenifere, the Pan-Yoruba Social Cultural Organization, Chief Ayo Adebanjo, has passed away at the age of 96. Arise News gathered that Adebanjo died on Friday morning at his residence in Lekki in Lagos State. His family confirmed the news of his passing in a statement shared with our correspondent, paying tribute to the influential leader. In a career that spanned several decades, Adebanjo was a strong advocate for the rights of the Yoruba people and a fierce proponent of a restructured Nigeria. His contributions to national politics, particularly in the pursuit of a fairer and more just society, earned him the respect of many across the political spectrum. Just months before his death, Adebanjo gave his final interview to Arise News, where he reflected on the challenges Nigerians continue to face. In the interview, he expressed concern for the country's future, emphasizing the importance of unity, fairness, and equity in governance. His words were a testament to his unwavering commitment to the ideals he fought for throughout his life.
To parliamentary system, the better for us. You have so many essays that, and the Premier will be more responsible. The Prime Minister is more responsible to the Parliament. By the name itself, Prime Minister, first among equals. If he misbehave, the Parliament said no, they question him every day on the issue. The ministers themselves are elected members from their constituency. So they are responsible to the people. So the advantages of parliamentary system so much that the program like this, we can't go into the details. So it's a welcome address, and I believe they should do it expeditiously and change the constitution now.
It's definitely a sad day in Nigeria when we lose anyone who pushes for justice and equity in society, particularly people who, portray the most positive and most courageous elements of their regions or their tribes without denigrating others, rather just celebrating the beauty of the Yoruba people, for example.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a sad day, yesterday when Baba Ayo Adebanjo passed on, on this show with Sheito, and then on Sunday, the last 2 weekends, we've devoted, substantial time to talking about Afenifere, particularly the rumbles surrounding who is the organizing secretary of the socio-political, not socio-cultural group. And of course, Papa Ayo Adebanjo's name, cropped up, all the time, given the fact that he was the de facto leader of Afenifere, up until his death. The baton was supposed to be passed on to him from Pa Fashionati. But sadly, he left, yesterday at the ripe old age of 96. And of course, our condolences to his family, particularly his wife, who is also 94, by the way. No one will ever forget the role that Pa Ayo Adebanjo played since, he's been part of the story of Nigeria, since independence, even before independence. He was organizing secretary of the action group of the late Sage Obafemi Awolowo. And of course, he was part of NADECO, as a lawyer, and his voice was never missing when it came to issues about Nigeria, not just issues about Yoruba, but issues about Nigeria. It was at the forefront of Ohanifere, the concept that was meant to be a handshake between Afenifere of the Yoruba and, of course, the Ohanese Ndigbo, of the Igbos. And, of course, that was part of the reason why he supported Mr. Peter Obi during the 2023 elections, because he felt that no part of Nigeria should be left behind and that equity was important. I like that the president, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has released a very moving tribute in his honor. They didn't always agree But I like the fact that, when it comes to final departure, that death represents, every issue that you might have with anybody. Of course, they'll put a stop to it. We will miss Pa Adebanjo, but of course that we hope that the things that he represented through Afenifere, through the Pan-Yoruba idea, will continue to live for many more years and decades and centuries to come.
Very well said. I mean, I want to just start by, of course, offering the family of Adebanjo our condolences here from Arise News. The news came in yesterday, and of course, anybody who knows Pa Ayo knows what he stood for, a true Awoist, true. His passing definitely marks the end of an era in Nigerian politics. He was one of the last living bridges between Nigeria's nationalist struggle and contemporary governance. He embodied integrity, ideological consistency, and resistance against political oppression. Unlike many politicians who shifted allegiances over time, Adebanjo remained committed to the ideals of Chief Awolowo, which was why he was always called, a true Awoist through and through. And he never wavered in his call for a truly federal Nigeria. His willingness to confront the government despite facing detention, even exile, set him apart as a fearless advocate for democracy. As you've mentioned, his contributions to NAFDAC as well and his opposition to military rule demonstrated his really steadfast belief in constitutional governance. He was very articulate and media savvy. He had granted a lot of interviews to us here at Arise News, using those interviews and public statements to challenge the status quo. His background in journalism, I believe he also had a background in law as well, and activism definitely gave him a unique ability to communicate these complex political ideas effectively. And finally, in a political climate that is often plagued by opportunism and corruption, he maintained a reputation for honesty and discipline. Just watching that video now, I actually remember when that interview was granted, and it just, it fills me with joy and sadness knowing that he's no longer with us, but knowing that at least the things that he had done, the messages that he had put out would always remain. His footsteps will always remain in the sands of time. And once more, I want to just, speak to the family directly and wish them our condolences, even as they mourn their dear father. So let's move on now to our next story. The Director General of the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, Professor Mojisola Adeyeye, has reiterated her support for the death penalty for those involved in the sale of fake drugs. Speaking on Arise Prime Time, Adeyeye described these traders as merchants of death who prioritize profits over human lives. She argued that the current penalties for such offenses are too lenient and that a stiffer penalty, such as the death penalty, is necessary to deter these illegal activities.
It is in our constitution in Nigeria. Some people may not want it, but there are some offenses that deserve death penalty. If somebody kills another person and that person is not repentant, maybe that person should be killed also. If the person has opportunity to repent, yes. To change their lives back, yes. But if it is not, why should we allow somebody to be killing others?
All right, then let's bring it back. When this is something that this fight against, fake drugs, and not even just fake drugs, even fake beverages, has been something that has been at the forefront even before Mrs. Adeyeye came into power as the DG. Now, what has become the center of this conversation is her advocacy for her push for the death penalty. I do know certain people that have actually lost loved ones because they thought they were getting treated for a particular disease or a particular sickness, only to find out at the end of the day that they were just taking pills that didn't necessarily have what was needed to make them feel better. And when you speak to a parent or you speak to someone who's lost a husband or a wife or a child, in that moment, if they hear something like this, it makes sense, because a lot of people look at it as, oh, we're fighting against Boko Haram and terrorism and all of this, but this is a silent killer in itself. So this push for the death penalty is something that, because even internationally, has legal and ethical concerns because of the certainty of the punishment. Counterfeit drugs indeed pose a grave, public health threat, but the capital punishment in itself is very contentious worldwide. Human rights advocates often argue about it, citing wrongful convictions, and that's my fear. In a situation where somebody is wrongfully convicted, once they have been killed, you can't go back and say, oh, by the way, we want to take it back. I do agree with Mrs. Adeyeye, where she says that there needs to be stricter punishments. There need to be more severe punishments. 5 years is not enough for people who are killing Nigerians every day based on fake drugs. However, this conversation about the death penalty might seem a bit too harsh. But then again, apart from that, the effectiveness as a deterrent, while severe punishments can deter, it's the certainty of that punishment. Because there are people that have even been given that 5 years and have not necessarily even served it. There are a lot of people that have been able to get out of the ranks because of corruption, because they've been able to pay certain agents. It's a conversation that It's a conversation that needs to be had, that needs to be looked at. I don't know if I agree with the death penalty, but I really believe that there needs to be stricter laws, and there needs to be a corresponding legislation that actually allows them, I know they're allowed to prosecute, they're allowed to seize property, but then that also gives them more power to be able to have certain oversight over the distribution of fake drugs and beverages.
Absolutely. I mean, the conversation is not new since the days of that glorious woman who fought till the very last, Professor Dora Akunyili. That conversation has been on. Of course, we know what happened eventually. I mean, it was a serious battle between Professor Akunyili, and the drug, fake medication cartels. When you have a situation where you are dealing with an industry that is worth $200 billion, and about $83 billion annually. You have $83 billion worth of fake and counterfeit medications globally, being sold. And then you can begin to appreciate why this cankerworm, this menace, has seemingly refused to go. I believe it was the WHO that says that 500,000 people in sub-Saharan Africa die as a result of fake and substandard counterfeit medications annually, including Nigeria. Fake anti-malaria drugs are very high on that. Fake antibiotics, are very high on that, which is why, you see that sometimes even friends and relations abroad, will be asking for an antibiotic, exactly, because it is cheap. And what the WHO therefore says is that 1 out of every 10 medications that you encounter in sub-Saharan Africa, particularly in Nigeria, is fake. And like you said, Shaiton, if you add that to the menace of fake drinks, not just liquor, where you're even talking about water,
fizzy drinks,
and stuff like that, it's a double jeopardy. Yes. And therefore, I appreciate what Professor Adeyeye is trying to say. The jury is still out there as per the efficacy or the necessity of capital punishment, but it's a conversation that must continue. What I would like to urge her to do is to use the style, of Professor Akunyili, and it's a war. If you are not ready for this battle, then, because advocacy for capital punishment alone will not cleanse, the urgent table. You will have to go into a battle ceaselessly on a daily basis. That's what can at least reduce the impact of what we are facing.
Definitely, I agree with both of you there, and I like what you said in that, this is a war. I think primarily when we think about what the roles of the DG of the NAFDAC should be, we're talking about public awareness campaigns. We've seen reports coming out that says that people are mixing detergents with fufu. We've seen reports saying that people are putting rat poison in order so that weevils don't attack their food, and that means that Nigerians are consuming, poisonous substances. We're seeing reports that, and the gap between 250,000 naira and the death penalty is so wide, that, you know, there's so much that comes in before you get to that point in time. If there is proper, you know, if there's proper and efficient management of the system, if we're saying that NAFDAC is doing regular testing, that their laboratory equipment is up to date, that they're doing public awareness campaigns, that they're doing everything within their power, and the only thing left is the penalty, is that certainty of penalty or punishment, as Shaitan put it. If that is all that is left, then we're like, okay, you know what, we're ready to have this conversation about stricter punishment. But I think sometimes we allow, there's like a co-opting that in Nigeria sometimes we just go straight to, oh, let's go to harsh punishment, let's beat the child. Have you done anything else, you know, before you get to that position?
Exactly.
The DG of NAFDAC has told us how she's collaborating with NDLEA, with
Standard Organization of Nigeria.
and Standard Organization, and I believe Customs. This is what we need to see more of. Yeah. You need to do all the things within your power, because talking about the death penalty, we are talking about lives here. We're talking about people's lives, and we're talking in a system where people posit that sometimes people who are in prison might not be the right person. You know, we're talking about innocence. We're talking about the permanence of death, and so I don't think it's even a conversation we should be having unless we see that NAFDAC is actually doing all within their power, and what is stopping them, what's handicapping them is this lack of penalty. And then I think we'd be ready for the conversation.
Very correct. All right, we move on. Students of the University of Ibadan, Ibadan College of Medicine, earlier this week took to the streets to protest, to express frustration over the lack of electricity at University College Hospital for more than 100 days. The students displayed placards with inscriptions such as, "We are tired of 100 days of darkness, save UCH," and insisted that the minister must resolve the crisis, which they said had disrupted their academic and clinical activities. This came amid a meeting between Minister of Power Adebanjo, the hospital management and officials of Ibadan Electricity Distribution Company, where all parties resolved to address the issues of power theft and payment of outstanding debt in the facility. Our Rice correspondent, Olutayo Famous Cole, reports.
It's now more than 100 days since the University College Hospital Ibadan last had power supply, an issue that has led to severe criticism and protests. The Minister of Power is at the hospital to see firsthand the situation of things and find a lasting solution to the disconnection, which has had far-reaching implications for patients, medical staff, and the hospital's overall operations.
There are basically three types of consumers, or three sets of consumers here. We have the clinical services unit of this territory, which is the hospital itself. That's what most people know. That's what the public is aware of. When you say UCH, they refer to the hospital. But beyond that, there is the College of Medicine, which outrightly belongs to the University of Ibadan. And they have two hostels. The Ayodele Falashe Hostel and the Alexander Brand Hostel that consume a reasonable amount of energy in this territory, but is lumped under a single UCH consumer point.
The Ibadan Electricity Distribution Company and the management of the hospital joined the Power Minister at a closed-door meeting, after which some resolutions were reached.
We should reconnect systematically. Don't just close the breaker and then everybody connects again, and then 2 weeks later we are off. Yes. That's why we agreed that it has to be systematic. We need to first of all yank off through the guidance of the hospital management, take off all those commercial loads first. They will advise us on the essential loads to be connected for a start, like the hospital, the clinic, and all that.
There's a need for a special intervention, or whoever can help us, to fund some of this. It's beyond the capacity of the hospital, unfortunately. But the general public, most of the time, don't know what we are facing, and they just pontificate without evidence.
We have decided jointly with the management of UCH to commence restoration of supply to this university systematically. Within the next 24 hours, we have acquired or procured a new transformer that will separate the clinical services from the rest, so that going forward, UCH will identify its own power consumption. Another transformer will determine the power consumption of the College of Medicine and its hostels that will be transferred to University of Ibadan for discharge. All these bodies were placed on UCH before.
The power outage was caused by the disconnection of the hospital from the national grid by the Ibadan Electricity Distribution Company due to an outstanding debt of over 495 million naira, risking the lives of patients, disruption of medical services, and increased cost burden. Olutai of Famous Call, Arise News, Ibadan.
You know, this story has been on, forever. Basically 100 days UCH. And the minister, by the way, is from that part of the world, from Ibadan. And I thought that, when they started counting 10, 20, 50 days, that, there would have been the swift, reaction, from his office. But thankfully, he has waded in, and there's a promise that power will be restored while they sort the issue of the outstanding almost 500 million naira, and then, possibly fully taking usage of national grid, so that he can have his own power base. I hope that, this can be settled.
What is interesting about this is, what we're hearing is that he actually went to the school and made that promise, and then by the time
that was after the demonstration.
Demonstration
by the
of 100 days.
Yeah.
But by the time they put the lights back on, it was only certain buildings that had it, and most importantly, probably those that had patients in it, which is very important because, like Tayo Famous Cole said, it's disrupting surgeries, it's paralyzing diagnostic services, and turning that once revered facility into darkness. But then the students are still protesting that we also deserve the right to have light. How is it that they were able to accrue a 500 million,
almost
500 million naira? Like, how do we get here? Like you said, day 10, day 20, day 50. There was no point where anybody had to say, okay, what's really happening here? But then again, I like the fact that the Minister of Power is very, active about this. But I just pray it's not just promises and they restore the light, because it's very important.
I think the most important thing is that this is not actually a solution to the problem. No, because it's
a temporary intervention.
It's a temporary.
But then it should buy the minister some time.
Yes, but I think first of all, I think the Minister of Power and the Minister of Health need to work together to make sure that our critical infrastructure, our clinics, our hospitals are not on Band A or are not overburdened. If they're on Band A, that they should pay special tariffs because they are critical infrastructure, as particularly healthcare infrastructure. Yeah, but our hospitals should get the most light, right?
Absolutely.
But also, I think beyond that, we have, according to our budget over the last 3 years, I believe UCH received over 600 million for electricity, about 613 according, to the FIJ. They were allocated 613 million naira over 3 years. Did that money get to them? And if so, what happened to that? What happened to those funds?
It's unlikely, given what even the Minister of Health said about only 20% of the entire health ministry last year, was
able to pay their bills. But these are the structural issues that we're saying that this does not fix.
Yeah.
Well, finally, on the week that was, a consortium led by Elon Musk has offered $97.4 billion to purchase the non-profit that controls OpenAI, intensifying his ongoing battle to prevent the AI startup from transitioning into a for-profit company. Musk, who founded OpenAI in 2015 before leaving the organization that he co-founded, has expressed frustration with its move towards profit-making. In response to Musk's bid, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman dismissed the offer, suggesting instead a purchase of Twitter for $9.74 billion. Musk's consortium includes his AI company XAI, along with Baron Capital Group and Emmanuel Capital. The bid adds complexity to OpenAI's ongoing shift from a non-profit to a for-profit model, which it claims is necessary for attracting the capital needed to advance AI development. Musk previously sued OpenAI and Altman, arguing that the focus on profit contradicts the organization's original mission. While OpenAI's board rejected Musk's proposal, the offer is creating significant disruption, potentially affecting its fundraising efforts and future plans. OpenAI was last valued at $157 billion, and a new funding round could push its valuation to $300 billion. I know one thing nobody wants is Elon Musk to be even more powerful, and I think something that I personally find bizarre is the richest man in the world saying that some things are not for profit because he has profited off of every single one of his ventures so far. And I think Elon Musk's ventures right now, going into Twitter, one of the most important and influential communication vehicles in the world, going into ChatGPT or trying to regain his stake in ChatGPT, one of the thought-forming, processes in the world, and his position as the head of Dodge in America. I think these things, for me, are frightening, particularly when we look at what has happened in South Africa in the last 2 weeks. When a single individual can wield so much power and control more money than countries, what we're seeing is a reorganization of the world order in a way that I do not believe us here in Nigeria prepared for.
Ready for. You just saying that reminds me of the video that's been making the rounds where he's in the Oval Office and you can see Trump is sat there and he's addressing the press and his son is just, and people are like, hey, what's really happening here? But let me just leave that on the side. He's definitely getting more and more powerful. But if we focus on this, I was watching Rotus's analysis of this story, I think it was 2 or 3 days ago, with the play on words and even just how multi-dimensional that tweet from Sam Altman was. They were friends before, now rivals. And even in the tweet that went out, that went viral, where he said, "Oh, rather buy Twitter for $9.7 billion." Now we do know that Twitter is now X is worth more than that. And the fact that he didn't even refer to it as X, he referred to it as Twitter. And then, of course, him now sending a circular out to his employees saying that their structure ensures that no individual can't take control of OpenAI. What we're seeing here, of course, with Elon Musk bidding for it for $97 billion, when we know that it's worth 150, and knowing that Sam Altman's plans is to be able to, at the next rounds, be able to get a $300 billion evaluation, shows what Elon Musk's objectives are, but we'll see. It's something that's already causing disruption. Would he be able to convince some of the stakeholders that maybe they actually need to separate? Because it's obviously started as a non-profit, but now we have that the profit margin that has come up, to see if there's going to be disruption and people on opposing factions. But Elon Musk is always he's going to be in the news a lot. This is not going to be the last we're going to hear of him in this.
He certainly will be in the news for the next 4 years if Trump survives, the 4 years. When you have a rich, powerful person, with government patronage like he does, you will have these sort of disruptions. It won't matter if Elon and Sam, Altman were once friends and partners before, and he's trying to play on people's, intelligence in a way, talking about it's the not-for-profit component of OpenAI that he wants to buy. He understands the valuation. But I'm enjoying the pawn that seems to be intended. The play on words of 97.4 billion and then the 9.7 billion. If you tie that to, the sort of things that excite Elon Musk, where that play on figure, is coming from. But we will see how this pans out. Is trying to mentally disrupt, or this is a prelim, to a bigger attempt to take over. You can't write Elon Musk off anything, just like Trump, when it comes to the unusual. And we will see how things pan out, in the next coming days, weeks, months, and years. All right.
Yeah. Well, that's all we have on the week that was. But before moving on, let's give you an update on a couple of stories making the rounds. Let's start with the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance has accused European leaders of censoring free speech and failing to control immigration, drawing a sharp rebuke from Germany's defense minister and overshadowing discussions on the war in Ukraine. The prospect of peace talks has been expected to dominate the annual Munich Security Conference after a call between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian leader Vladimir Putin this week, but Vance barely mentioned Russia or Ukraine in his speech to the gathering.
Also, the Vatican says Pope Francis has been admitted to hospital in Rome to undergo treatment and test for bronchitis. The 88-year-old pontiff arrived at the Gemelli Hospital on Friday morning. A short statement said the Pope has had bronchitis symptoms for several days and has delegated officials to read his prepared speeches at recent events. On Wednesday, the Pope asked a priest to read part of his speech because of his difficulties with the illness. He had also asked aides to read on his behalf at a Mass on Sunday and at last Wednesday's general audience. Pope Francis held meetings at his Vatican residence last week in an attempt to rest and recover.
Well, Brighton completed a league and cup double over Chelsea on Friday after beating the London side 3-0 for the second time in a week. Brighton had beaten the London club 2-1 in the FA Cup last Saturday and gave an even better performance for all 3 points in the Premier League last night, thanks to a magic moment from Japanese international Kaoru Mitoma and a brace from Gambian Yakubu Minteh. With 27 minutes gone, Mitoma brought down with a plumb a hopeful ball forward by goalkeeper Bart Verbruggen and powered past Chelsea's last defender before firing a low shot past goalkeeper Philip Jorgensen. Mitoma was also involved in Brighton's second 11 minutes later. He danced through the Chelsea penalty box before firing a low shot across goal. The defence cut out the cross but couldn't clear the danger and the ball fell to Minteh, who stroked it home. The Gambian winger also got his second and Brighton's third 17 minutes into the second half after working a nice 1-2 with Danny Welbeck and firing in from a tight angle as the Chelsea defence stood and watched.